Hello, welcome back to Evil Genius Props, where all Doomsday devices are guaranteed with a money-back guarantee. If the world hasn't ended, you get your money back. Today, we're going to do some woodworking. So I grew out a beard, put on a flannel shirt, and we're going to cut some wood. Now, what are we going to make? Let's be honest, I don't normally make props out of wood. They're heavy, people get hit by them, they sue, it becomes a whole thing. So there is instead a type of furniture design that came out of the late 18th or 1800s, 19th century, into the early 20th, known as campaign furniture. And this was furniture designed by the English to be taken on campaign with you. So if you're uh, in the military in India or South Africa or anywhere else they happen to colonize, uh, you would have this furniture that was designed to be packed up into boxes, put on a ship, and sailed around with you, or put onto a cart and carried around. Ignoring the problems of colonialization, and there are many, it's neat looking furniture, and I really appreciate it, and I feel like it's a good design for themed products in this case. So what we're going to do is, rather than make a full-size campaign chest, which I would like, but Sheila decided that she wants to be able to fit in the bedroom too. So we're going to make something smaller. And in this case, what we're going to do is make a watch box. So we're going to make a little box that's going to fit on the dresser to hold watches and my wallet, keys, all that kind of stuff. Now, those, in this case, is going to be small enough to hold some watches and my other stuff. We're basing the designs off of campaign furniture by, who's that by? Christopher Schwartz. I was right. And he went through and did a lot of design elements based on some research he did, and a lot by C. Clark Antiques. We're actually going to put a link to a specific video of theirs below here, where there is a brass bound box. So they didn't have watch boxes during this period. That's not a thing that happened. They didn't have watches, frankly, most of them. And they certainly didn't have enough to necessitate a box for them. So what they would have would be basically dressing boxes, or correspondence boxes. They'd still be small boxes, still made the same way, and usually be brass bound. So that's what we're going to base our design off of. I got some mahogany earlier. We're going to cut that up and make that into our box. And then it's a question of adding some drawers, adding some lids, hinges, all sorts of fun stuff like that to make an appropriately themed box. The idea is to make this watch box that isn't from this period, but fits the design style and looks like it could be. So, with that said, let's go make some sawdust. So what we've got here is my mahogany board laid out. I want my interior dimensions to create a hole, if you will, of 8 inches by 16 inches. So I'm going to cut out my lengths to include the width of the boards. So for 8 inches, I'm going to cut this down to 3/4 of an inch wide for the sides. So we're going to do 9.5. And then the second piece, I'm not going to mark it off right now, but it's going to be 17.5. So we'll have 2 of these, 9.5, and then 2 at 17.5. So I'm going to split this down, this 15/16, that's the size that Rockler sells it in. I'm actually going to split this down to be 3/4. So what I'm going to do is slide this all the way over. And then we'll run this through. It's basically resaw this down to the size that we want, which is just that little bit. And then after that, you can see there's this edge here where it's damaged from where it was bundled. I think that's neat, but I also don't want it on my watch box. So we're going to cut that part off, but we'll get to that part in a minute. Next step is going to be to go through and do this bit. we saw it. So I've got my pieces cut. We're going to do these as dovetails. So there's going to be more sanding coming up, but I just want to still kind of a rough edge on these that I want to clear up a little bit. So we're going to sand these down real quick. Nothing too extreme, just 120 sandpaper just to sort of smooth them out a little bit. Get them nice and even, and then start planning out some dovetails and figure out how to do a cut a drawer. So part of what that did, besides clearing things up, is it made me sort of look very carefully at each side so I can decide which side I want to be which. So like this one's going to be in the back because there's a bit of a saw issue, and that's going to be on the inside. So the back inside's going to be here. So that makes this one's going to be the front, but there's some wood burns. We're going to put that one on that part on the inside. These are going to be our sides. And same thing, the part that I have sort of facing up here, turns out, is going to be our side pieces. Not that kind of side piece, get your mind out of the gutter. But we're going to go ahead and put these, it's going to be roughly like this, except these are going to be dovetailed, so they're going to be inset. So, this is our back, sides. This, there's going to be piece that goes here about 2 inches down. That's going to be the top part of the drawer. That's going to be the top part altogether, and then the bottom's going to be a pull-out drawer, possibly with a secret. So what I want to figure out is how to cut out this part. I don't want to just cut the entire thing at 2 inches. I kind of just wanted to cut it out this way. So let me think about that and we'll come up with some ideas. All right. I'm not a woodworker per se. I am not an expert on dovetails. I've watched some videos. I know roughly what to do. I'm just not great at it. So if you're watching this to learn how to do dovetails, you've come to the wrong place. If you've come to this to watch someone fail at dovetails, stick around. If you want to learn how to do this, check out somebody like Jonathan Katz-Moses, Matt Esley, somebody who knows what they're doing, not me. But especially since I don't actually have all the same tools that I should to do this well. In this case, what I should do is mark this off with a marking gauge, but I don't have one of those. So what I'm doing instead is marking my height of the boards I'm going to cut. Give this a shot. So I'm using a dovetail jig here just to help hold everything in place. So you cut one way, and then we're going to flip it around and cut the other direction. Next step is just do that for the rest of it. So we'll come back and do that in a minute. So the next step is to clean out. When you do that, cut these parts out, you leave some at the bottom, and then you come back in with a chisel and clean those out. Somewhat as predicted, I managed to screw up the dovetail process by cutting, I think these are called the pins, and the other part are called the tails, and you're supposed to cut the tails first and then use that to lay out the pins. I didn't do that. So what I need to do now is figure out how to transfer the pins onto the board that needs to have the tails. I think I've got that laid out so that it would go like this. I guess like this. So I marked out, sorry, see, there you go. Roughly the tail positions, and I think I can use that then to lay out across the top and then use the jig to cut them down correctly. So we'll try this out. If not, we try something else. All right, let's go ahead and mark out our depth. And mark this out on both sides. Let's flip it around to the other side. We're going to try to transfer these tails to the other side so they're even, because they are not otherwise even. All right, took a lot of work to try to get them together, but there is a very ugly dovetail joint. So we're going to transfer the tails to the other side, which I've already done once, and we're going to cut those out and then use those to lay out the pins on the other side. Fortunate thing is this is in the back, so not really going to be super visible, and really just one of those things that I just need to work on if I'm going to do dovetails. All right, I'll do those other ones and then we'll catch back up. So what I'm doing here is, this is the top part that I cut off. End up having to cut it by hand after I got started, so it's a little bit wavy, so we're going to use the plane here to smooth it out. I don't want to take out too much material, I just want to get it level. Alright, so what I've got here is a also poorly made dovetail board, and the back is down here. Put this side right here, and then use that to mark out the tail, or the pins board. This is why I get them confused, because these are the tails, these are the pins. They both seem pretty similar to me, which is why I have issues. Well, that's why I have issues with this anyway. All right, so I'll mark those out with a knife, and then we can use the jig to cut those out again, and then spend half an hour trying to get them to fit. Alright, let's make sure I cut off the right part this time, because last time I didn't. Okay, let's try this out. So compared to the first one, this one's a lot closer. There's a little bit I need to clean up on, looks like this pin. clean that up, and then we should be good to go. So actually, before I even did that, I just flipped it over because I had it wrong, and it's a lot closer. Still cleaned it up a little bit, but I'm a lot happier with that than, say, the first one. Just see where it's maybe a little bit tight still, and clean those up. So I think the only thing I need to do is maybe cut down the bottom here on this. Looks like this one is a little bit high, but otherwise that one's pretty successful. I am capable of doing it, just need some practice. As you can see, things work really well. It's supposed to be a box, so these are supposed to be on the same side, not an S. So yeah, so what's going to happen is it's going to get this much shorter, and I'll try again. It happens. As we're learning, we make mistakes. That's how we make better mistakes later on. Okay, recut that one side, and now it looks more like a box. Okay, so what I want to do with the front here to create the tails, to remember this, is I'm going to just use the ones I cut previously and line those up, so this way they're going to be even. So I clamped the two boards together. I'm going to take the square, which is a triangle, and mark those lines. This is actually done better with a knife. Almost screwed that up again, because these boards are still going to be the tail boards, so I need to cut the tails on this side. So what I was able to do, or what I'm going to be able to do, is take the marks I made and transfer them over onto these boards to be the tails, so I could still keep that same spacing that I like, but have it on the correct side. All right, there's the box. I went and actually labeled the corners so I can remember how they go together, because that's important, because they kind of only fit together one way. And there's our drawer front. I said there's our drawer front. Gonna fit in there. Looks like I need to shape it down just a little bit more, as it's not quite fitting there, but we'll take care of that. So normally on a box like this, what I would do for a lid is I would make the whole box and then cut off the top here on a table saw and use that for the lid. That way it fits nicely. You know, it's the match, grain matches, everything's great. But looking at this, particularly with the dovetails, I'm not sure how well that would actually work. So what I'm going to do instead is I cut some other pieces here, and they're going to go right here to serve as the frame for the lid. Now, because this is a watch box and I have some watches that are solar powered, I want to put a pane of glass in the top, so the top is glass. Lets the light in, let the solar powered watches charge. So what I think I'm gonna do is kind of just do butt joints on the top here, just because I don't have room to do miters or dovetails, and then cut a channel to put the glass in. So like this piece will take and run a channel along there on the table saw, and then that way I can go and get a pane of glass. I checked, I don't have any big enough, but I can get a pane of glass like this very dirty one here and reset it into that and make the top and glue it up that way with the glass in place. And in some ways, doing it that way will actually make things easier in that the lid will be a separate piece. So I could, for instance, just about glue up the rest of the box and not have to worry about fitting that in. So I need to do a little bit of research. I need to figure out how to do the drawer down here at the bottom. How to make this part fit in here and then sort of ride out. So I need to figure out some sort of runner system for it. I'm not entirely sure yet. I'm going to do a little bit of research on that. But we'll use that as the drawer front. And I'm wondering if I can just sort of have it on the sides. I also went and got some 1/8 inch Baltic birch plywood to serve as the bottom of the drawer. And also what I'm going to do is put this part right here is going to be the bottom of the top tray, and the other piece will go beneath that. Looks like maybe I need to shave that down just a little bit. Got the dovetails fitting a little tighter, and now the drawer front's a little snug. Anyway, so I think what I'm going to do is maybe either just cut a channel in this piece and sort of slide it in, or maybe take some of the offcut pieces and almost build like a tray for it to sit on. So put this here, put ones on the sides, all along the bottom level here, and let those sit. And with the height from the lid, we'll have a little extra room there for the top watches. So I might just do that. But I'll figure it out and we'll keep moving. This is sort of where you get to see my problem solving process live and just working through some of these things. I do have designs in mind. I do have plans, though, as Mike Tyson said, everybody has plans until they get punched in the face. Actually, I think he said punched in the mouth. Anyway, point being, we're going to keep working this and keep iterating some solutions and get to where we like it. This is the advantage of making your own stuff, is you can sort of change it on the fly as you're going. Also, in my case, this isn't a thing anybody else is going to make. So I went ahead and cut out the bottom of the top tray of the 1/8 inch Baltic ply. Used a jigsaw because it doesn't fit on my bandsaw, and the blade on my table saw is too big for it. It would just do even more damage, so I used the jigsaw. And we'll smooth this out, and I'm also not going to worry too much about it because we're going to cover it with red felt anyway. So I'm just going through now and squaring off the edges, and sort of, because I'm not great for woodworking, just a little bit at a time, testing it against the box, just trying to make sure it fits. This is, again, as I say, one of those things, if you actually know how to do woodworking, you're going crazy. In the meantime, I hope you're enjoying the ride as I try and fail and work my way through this a little bit at a time. But that's just how I work. So here's what I'm going to do, is take some of these offcut pieces and put them on the underside. Just going to glue that on there and use that to support the tray piece. So I'm going to go through and just sort of mark where that's going to be. So I think what I'll do, since these are all slightly different sizes because they're just the offcuts, is take one of these longer ones here and just use that and cut that into pieces. And just do here, here, and off on the sides. we're not dealing with any serious weight here. It's a collection of watches and the stuff that lives in my pocket. Actually, even that's not bad. So I'll see how long these are and then cut these down to length. Coming in here is a sort of a midpoint and a bit of confession. It's not turning out the way I wanted it to, and I was yesterday feeling really down on it, not happy with it at all, not working on it, and just going, do I need to just chalk this up to lessons learned and that's it for that piece of mahogany, and just sort of, you know, woodworking's not my thing. Find woodworking anyway. But I had some ideas about it, thought about it a little bit, and sort of rallied, and I'm sort of back and ready to go on it. Hoping to make some more good progress on it today and maybe finish it up. At least parts of it. There are some stuff that I need to still get in the mail as a piece of campaign inspired woodwork. It does sort of need some little touches that you can't just get at your big box or even necessarily a local woodworking store. So I've got some on order from Lee Valley. But like I said, this happens to me a lot with projects. Sort of I get to a midway point and you're right at the middle of it and you can see where you want it to go and it's not going there. So it's really easy to sort of go, well, that just didn't work. The better option is just to roll with it and follow it through and figure out where it's going to end up. It may not be how you thought it was going to be when you started, but that can be a good thing. So I'm going to keep going on it. And, like I said, I think I've got an idea, and hopefully we'll be able to clean this all up and get it to something that I actually want to have on my dresser. So here's what I've done is I went ahead and cut the guides over here. This is going to be the bottom for our drawer. And it's going to fit together like that. So I'm going to cut it off here, cut these ones off. So I just need to measure that out. All right, so this is the main part of the drawer. The back piece is still gluing up at the moment, so it's going to be a minute. But I can go ahead and glue this together, and then that'll let me use that as the basis for the back piece. So just a question of putting in glue, and of course then gluing things up. All right, so we'll put some clamps on these parts to hold those together. That should be enough to keep the drawer bottom in place. All right, we'll let that dry up. While things are drying on the watch box, I'm going to go ahead and do the lining for the shelves, basically. Now for this, I just have some red felt. Picked this up at the fabric store when I made my last watch box. And it looks like this is just about the right size left over there. So smooth that out a little bit. Should I iron this? Yeah, probably. Am I gonna? No. I'll just complain when it doesn't work out instead. Cut that out. I'm actually gonna flip it over because there's marker on this side. And what I'm going to do is use some spray adhesive and spray this all down. And it's going to be a little bit big on the sides. That's okay. We're going to trim that back. And or if I need to, or if I have room, maybe wrap it around the sides a little bit. Now, it probably would have been smarter if I had done this before I glued everything together. So what I'm going to do is just sort of squeeze it all in. Didn't completely completely cut through, but it gave me a lot. Now all I need to do is sort of trim this down. If I didn't want to show off the wood, I would actually do like this and bring the felt up the sides. But I want to show off that mahogany. Got mahogany, I might as well make use of it. Now, in this case, I'm going to get it cut, but I'm not going to glue it down because, as I just mentioned, I want to show off this wood, so I want to finish this before I glue it down. But I can get my angles cut. Gonna put some 1, 2, 3 blocks on here just to help sort of flatten and straighten it all out. Just some extra weight in there. All right, here's where we are on the box. Zoom out a little bit here. So we've got the drawer cut, glued together. We're gonna sand and then put on some runners on the sides of this and also in the carcass here. Speaking of the carcass, this is put together. Our tray for the top fits in there nicely. I trimmed it down while you weren't looking, and that's good to go. So what we want to do with this, I'm going to sand this down. It'll be easier to take care of that before it's glued up, and then figure out our drawer runners for the drawer. Have those cut. I will just need to apply them, and basically the main idea is going to be put these little runners on the drawer and put these on here for it to slide on, and we'll need to get the spacing on all these right, but that's the next step, next couple of steps. So first thing we're going to do is everyone's favorite woodworking time, sanding. So this part I'm just going to take apart and sort of lay out the pieces individually. All right, so those parts are sanded. Let's deal with our drawer slides. So what I'm going to do is just take these pieces. These are going to go on the drawer. These are going to go on the carcass. These are just offcut pieces. I'm going to smooth out these. This is 220. Yeah, 220 grit. Just so that's nice and smooth. We're going to wax those up before we actually apply them. So this way there's at least a nice smooth surface to write against. So what I need to figure out is exactly how to place these guys. I think what we'll do is put just a little bit of something underneath there, because this piece and this piece aren't taking up the whole side. So I can raise this up a little bit so it's not sitting directly on the surface, and then I can glue that down. So here's what we're going to do. I've got some offcuts of 1/8 inch Baltic birch ply, and we're going to use that to then raise up our slides here on that, so they're 1/8 of an inch up. And I can put these basically all the way back. Where is our glue? There's the glue. And we'll glue these up. Glue the rails on here. let's take the back off here, and then that way I'll be able to clamp these guys down on both sides. Let's take those out of there so they don't get glued to the bottom, and we'll let those set up. So here's what we're working on now with this, which is the drawer, and I've got it so that it slides in and out, which is nice, but it's not closing because this side's just catching a little bit. It looks like it's just this part up at the top, so let's figure out how we can clean that up. And I think maybe the best one's actually going to be just to do a plane across the top. So probably what we'll do here then, let's see. No, this is live problem solving, folks. I think what we want to use here is just going to be the plane. So let's take it to the planing station, for lack of a better word. Let's try that. Let's see how it goes now. All right, it's a little bit better. It's still not quite there, so we're going to do a little bit more with the block plane. All right, so we're right on the edge of being able to fit, so we'll switch from the plane to some sandpaper, just to smooth that out and bring that in. All right, that's good. So I think really our next steps are just going to be to put some tung oil on these bits, maybe even glue up the carcass here. Can't think of what else we need to finish on this part. I guess we'll need to put on the runners on the drawer. That's what else we need to finish. So I'll do that next. Okay, so here's what we're looking at now, is we need to get our slides onto the side of the drawer. So what I've done, let's see if I can figure out a way you can see this, is I'm gonna put the actual slides on here, and I think what I'm gonna do is apply some super glue to that side, activator on the drawer, and then get this in position and just slide the drawer over to it. And I think that should be enough to be able to get it some pressure to hold it, just enough to touch it there, and that'll hold it in place. And then with the activator and the super glue, it'll just be glued on there pretty much right away. Let's see if I can find something that I can put in behind there to help push that over a little bit and keep it in place where I want it. I think an 1/8 inch might be too big. Let me see what I've got here for 1/8 scraps. Or smaller. Here's a small scrap. Is this the right size? Too small. Because what I don't want to do is end up squeezing the two pieces together between the two sides. I'm going to put a clamp on this just to hold these two pieces together to keep it from sliding out as I put it together, just to make sure that that's the right size. Actually, if I do it the way I had this planned, as this slides back and makes contact, it'll set up and stick there, which is not what we want. I think if I can use these 1/8 inch spacers, I might be able to just use regular wood glue, that is. I know there's been a whole lot of sort of going, all right, I'm going to do this, then I'm going to do this, and then not actually doing any of it. And this is one of those things that I want to get planned out so I get this right. This is my first time doing drawers like this, so I want to figure this out and get it right. So we'll try this. And if it doesn't work, we'll figure something else out. That's how I work. Alright, so those seem pretty stiff. We'll let those go and see how that works out for us. I'd prefer to be able to put some sort of clamp on them, but I don't know that I can get in there in a reasonable way to do so. Let's see if I can clamp just the whole thing down. Well, we'll let that set up and dry. Here's where we are now. Glue set up, drawer works. And I actually managed to catch myself before I glued these sides directly onto the interior. As the way I had set up before, as I was letting the glue dry, any squeeze out from the glue was going to land directly on those and glue everything together, which is decidedly not what I wanted. So I managed to catch that before anything bad happened and got that cleaned up. And now they're on their well, and it works as a drawer. I can even pick it up. So a big part of what makes campaign furniture is the hardware. One of the things that's common was brass binding along the joints. So I've got some thin brass strips, and we're going to just put some of those right over there. Will help cover up some of the questionable dovetails that I've done. But so we'll take care of those in a bit. Cut some of those out. Do them as well on our lid, where because of the way this lines up, there will actually be sort of this gap that you would otherwise see. But we'll cover that over with the brass strap so that it's not visible. But in addition to that, one of the key sort of defining factors with campaign furniture, because it was designed to be taken on campaign and moved around a lot, was that all the hardware would be recessed and lay flat to the side. So like the sides of the boxes was the total size. So like there wasn't the box plus 2 inches on the side, either side for handles. So with that in mind, I have this. It is a pull ring, and this will go on the front here as the pull for the drawer, and then when it's not used, it'll flatten back out. And just pull that out the ring and pull out the drawer. As well, I got some brass hinges to go in the back, and lots of tiny brass screws. Those will actually go with the brass straps to help hold those in. So I've marked out what I think is the center, and I don't actually have a Forstner bit as big as this, but I got one that's pretty close. So I'm going to start with that to sort of hog out a little bit of the main circle here. All right, so I don't want to go all the way down, but there is this divot there. So what I do have is a bit that is about the right size. So we're going to use that center ring that I've already cut to start. Cut that one down a little bit farther. And yes, this would have been easier if I'd done this before I glued this on my drill press. All right, the other thing is there is the hinge piece here. So I need to cut room out for that as well. And what I can do now is just sort of shave right along the edge. But now I can use this to get a measurement for the rest. I'm just going to push from that mark I made with the marking knife. And if I have to, I'll come back again. I did some test pieces, and I've lost the piece of wood. And it was really easy to sort of overshoot that circle a little bit, and I want to avoid that. So I'm going to go really slow, take my time, which is hard because I am impatient. Because I'm trying to be real careful, I'm working really close to the tip of the chisel, and you can see that I'm really choked up on it. All right, I'm going to go ahead and clear this out a little bit with the Dremel. All right, so I'm not going to screw this in now. I just did a whole lot of work cutting it in, but I'm not going to fully attach it yet, just because I want to do the rest of it so I can get it in there. So here's where we are. I went ahead and stained the inside. Just use some oil, some tongue oil. This isn't actual tongue oil. I believe it's tongue oil finish, so I prefer to have the real stuff, but this is what I have for right now. We're just going to take some regular paste finishing wax. Just take a little bit. Take a little bit. And mostly on top, but also the sides. And just rub that on there nice. More on the other side. And then we're going to do the same thing over on the drawer. And then the idea there is that the wax will make it a little bit easier for that to slide in and out. So with that done, I've also went ahead and glued in the drawer liner. And I hope I'm at the point where now the only thing left to do at this point is to start gluing this part up. So I'm going to get the clamps ready, so I'm not reaching for them later, because that's totally something I would do. And dovetails are nice and strong, so we don't need a lot of glue to hold things together. We just want to keep the dovetails from sliding around a little bit. And now comes the trick for cleaning up these corners. And that is some of the dust from working on these guys. What we're going to do is just put some glue right in here. Take a tiny pinch and just rub it in there, and basically what we're doing is making our own kind of custom wood filler to fill in those areas where maybe it didn't quite work out right. Let's go ahead now and put on some clamps. Give them the clamps! Put that top layer here, this top drawer, shelf, whatever you want to call that, just to help sort of keep everything square. So it's clamped up. We'll come back to it later and then clean up those corners with some sandpaper. I went and got a piece of glass and had it cut to fit, and you'll see it slides right in there, and that'll be our lid. So all we have to do now is just glue the lid up. There's a little bit of extra room this way, so I've got some tape on here to hold everything kind of right where I want it until I get the clamps on. For this clamp up, I'm going to use one of these guys. I pre-fit it earlier. And this way the clamping pressure is equal on the corners. Should help keep everything nice and straight. So I've done the lid. We're going to go ahead and do the side now. And I think I'm just going to do one right here. I'm going to put it right on this dovetail. No particular reason why I need to do it there, just aesthetically with the other one being up here. I feel like that's going to be a good one. I don't think I'm going to do one in front of the drawers, just because I have to split it, obviously. And then it's not going to look right, I don't think. So we'll go with one right here, but it's the same thing as doing the other ones. Just lay it out. If you get a sneak peek on the inside there, that's just a single coating of tung oil. I'm going to do 2 on the outside, at least 2. But that's why the inside looks a little bit different than the outside here. So I think what I found out is that putting the chisel right at the edge here and cutting that really helps that first line come through. It just really helps cut those fibers a little bit better than just the knife. And I do just keep flipping this around just to get the angle that I want, so I'm not pushing this at myself. I can just work on it really well and safely. Man, the end grain just is not nearly as nice as to work with as across the grain, or with the grain, I guess. And then just flip that down and do the other side. And I'm going to repeat that 7 more times. So I'll do that and we'll catch back up. So this is a rough idea of what it's going to look like. These are just sort of held on either by friction or tape. But you can get a preview what it's going to look like. I'll clean up a little bit more beforehand, but this is the idea, is to get these sort of brass bands along the side. I think next thing I'm going to do actually is going to cut in the hinges. So I'm going to do 3 hinges. 3 hinges. And I just sort of laid them out so they're roughly even, but aesthetically pleasing, even though they're going to be in the back. So they're about 3 inches on a side. And about 3.5 in between. So you can't see them here, but when I take off the lid, one of them's going to fall, but you can see where they are. And then we'll just do kind of just like I just did with the bands. And just cut in the hinges. And then it's just a case of chiseling out the waste. I'm going to move the lid with the glass so I don't break that. So I think I might actually move this out just a little bit to completely hide that hinge in there. So not a big deal, just trim a little bit more off the front. And cut in on what I'm calling the carcass here. Now I'll figure out how to get those transferred up onto our glass. I'm cutting these out now and then actually going to do the finish before I attach these. Last time we did this I did the finish and then attach them. It didn't work out quite as well as I'd like. Alright, so I've got enough of a mark to just lay them out. We'll get this out of the way. We'll just do the same. And then I think I might actually be able to put some finish on this tonight. These should line up. And then that will be the hinges to open the top. Next steps really are just to put a finish on this and then cut up some dividers for the inside. So I'm going to put some stain on and we'll catch up later to do the dividers. So I did a little bit of research just practice. This was a spare piece of the brass, and tried seeing if I could just drill a hole and put the screw in to hold it down for the bands, and turns out not really, because it sticks out, so I don't want that, so we're just going to skip that part. Probably just do some glue or some epoxy to hold that in place. On the other side, the screws worked fine on the hinges, as they're sort of countersunk a little bit to take that into consideration. So that part works, this part doesn't, so we're not going to screw the brass bands down. So our finish is done, and I'm gonna see if I can screw these guys on well enough. I've just got some regular small brass screws, and I went ahead and just poked a hole with the awl to start them off. I normally hate flathead screws. Focus. There we go. But they're appropriate for this style. So even though they probably wouldn't be this small, that's what works for this. I've made a fully functioning box. That's a drawer. Everything to go now is just ease of use for installing the pull or cosmetic and putting in the brass up there. The last bit of hardware we need to put on is the brass banding here. So I tried using just some super glue to see if that would hold on okay, and it did not. So what we're going to do instead is some 5-minute epoxy. This is an older bottle, so I'd be surprised if I was able to actually get them to come out evenly. So the last thing I need to do here is make up the dividers. And I've already cut these pieces to width and also cut out this notch. But what I'm going to need to do now is set up just how far apart to make them. And I'm actually going to cut off this so that this is just sort of an open area on this side. Not to hold watches, but to hold, more like a valet tray, to hold my wallet, keys, stuff like that. So I'm just going to use one of the pillows that holds the watches to set just how far apart that needs to be. And then help hold that in place with a 1, 2, 3 block. Just try to make sure that's nice and even. Then what I'm going to do is mark off so now I have a line, tilt that so you can see it, a line here that shows where this is going to be, and that will be, I'm going to cut that out. So I went ahead and made the cuts along the sides on my bandsaw. I'm going to use my 1/4-inch chisel here and sort of use that to just come over and just pop right off. Now I suspect this is actually going to be too small. And it is. But I can get an idea of just how much I need to open it up, which is not that much actually. So I am going to use a chisel again. I have no idea if this is the proper technique, but I like to sort of almost rock. Let me get you closer here. Almost rock that in to start that cut off, especially on the edge. And then I can sort of slide it in the rest of the way. going too big. I'm not going to use any glue on these, so I want them to fit tightly. I think that can maybe go a little bit deeper, but it's a nice tight fit, so I'll try and clean this out a little bit more. And now I'll use that to set up for the next ones. So I've got 3 of these done now, and I've got 1 more to go. And what I'm going to do with this one is, rather than go like the other ones where it extends past, this is going to be on the end. So we're going to cut the end of this, where this last piece ends, is I'm just going to cut the whole thing off there and then cut a notch in the bottom to fit in the top so that it sits flush. This one I may actually put a little bit of glue in just to hold it in place because it's not going all the way through like the other ones do. So this is what I meant about sort of just cutting it off flush at the end there. And that makes it just sort of as a stop point. So then I take the other ones, I can just sort of slot them back in. And then those are the dividers. And they'll sit right in the watch box. And can hold a pillow in between them. Then just have to put things like wallet or keys over there. And it'd be a nice little valet tray in the morning. All right, I just need to apply some tung oil to the dividers, keep those protected, and then I'm going to call it done. I'm not going to put any dividers in the bottom right now. I'm going to use that to hold watch straps, tools, stuff like that, that I don't use all the time, but are still watch associated. And then like my top 8 watches, the ones I actually wear somewhat regularly, will go up here. And I have another, let's face it, another watch box that's going to stay around anyway. So I'm just going to put the watches I don't wear as often in that. Okay, and here it is. Holds my watches, holds my stuff out of my pockets. I'm happy with the way this looks, the finish. I'm still not good at dovetails, but I'm happy with the way these turned out. Same with the brass up here, I like the way that looks. I've got a nice pull on the drawer. That slides okay, so that's, you know, a worry. That's my first time really making a drawer like that. Lid opens up nice. This is removable and adjustable, so if I decide I want to maybe make it 6 to have more room over here, or put these someplace else and make it go all the way over, or adjust the sizing, I can do that. Like, that's all available to me now. These are the watches I tend to wear the most, so I can just have those as easy access. My prior one had them in a tray. Had a tray up top that I lift off to get to the second level, which was infinitely harder, especially if I was trying to do that on a work day and had to get out the door. So I'm happy with it. There are some mistakes that I made, some things that I've learned, which is, you know, half the goal here is I make these mistakes to learn from them, and hopefully you won't have to make them later on. For instance, I completely cut off one of the dovetails. I cut the wrong thing when I was sawing it off, and I didn't have extra wood, so I glued it back on now. I know which one it is now. That being said, some of the dovetails are just really wonky, but I put those ones in the back, so they're not really visible. And like I said, overall, just really happy with it. I mean, it's maybe not the best watch box in the world, but it's the best watch box I've made so far. And it does fulfill my needs. If it's got those brass bands, it's got the dovetails, it's made out of mahogany, it looks like it could be a part of a campaign furniture set. Obviously, they weren't going to have a watch box, but that's beside the point. I've got what I wanted, which was to make it look like it was campaign furniture. So that's it for us this time. Be sure to like and subscribe, and we'll see you next time.